told you kind of how to get around, but it's kind of up to you to get the grease out too. And that's the same way with the front one and the little cup that goes in the front and stuff too. You know, you have just as much trouble with that if you don't maintain it. So then we go on to this other thing I always preach about. And it's a really fine looking oil filter housing that I have sitting over here that I'll bring it out there for everybody to look at. But what we're really looking at is this little ball right here. See that little ball?
Mm-hmm.
That's a spring ball. You see the little spring thing up inside there. But this is called a oil filter bypass.
Okay.
That's in case your oil filter actually gets plugged up or whatever. Bypasses the oil through that hole. See that? Little ball right there.
Yep.
All right, well. I guess we could probably go a little backwards to where we're at there. I gotta then we're going down to cause and effect. Now every time you start your motor and your oil pressure is 0 on the engine side and it's coming from the pump, which is, gosh, I should have got a motor out or whatever. On the back of this motor, if everybody wants to peer into this, the oil pump is driven off the back of the camshaft.
Oh, yeah.
And the hole where the oil comes through comes out here and here, basically, with the oil pressure relief valve. So the only thing between your transmission and your oil pressure relief valve is the pump. No filters, no nothing. Okay, so the bad part about it is you do get chips in your oil pressure relief valve, and it will stick that open too, so that your oil pressure will get real spongy. You let it off on the RPMs, it'll go down real quick, and then it doesn't go back up very quick as you pick up your RPM, so you got something stuck in your oil pressure relief valve. But now when the oil pressure relief valve relieves, see this little hole, this little pocket right over here? This is right where the main bearing is in the motor, and this little pocket actually is right where the oil discharge is. Right over the top of this. So it comes down spraying on this, and it sprays out in this direction and all over things. So one of the things that's responsible for it, there's a weak spot in this car, and that's this little gear right here. And the reason for it being weak is because all the oil that comes out of this spot here, well, is unfiltered. It's just discharging out of your motor because of too much oil pressure. So this is the oil pressure relief. And of course the oil comes from down here across this pipe out of the bottom of your transmission. Comes up through here, comes up to the oil pump. So you can remember maybe the last time you got it in your car in the morning and it was kind of cold and you didn't warm it up at all. You fired it up and you shifted it over and reversed and went a little bit. Remember, you kind of grounded in the reverse. I mean, you guys never do that, right?
Exactly.
Right. Or let's say when you start up the street and your gearbox oil is cold and you go to shift it in gear, you get a little crunch because your synchros are not working quite as well as they could yet in the warm oil. Well, every time it does that, there's two places it goes. It either goes through the oil pressure relief valve, because it sucks that little chunk of metal up off the bottom of your transmission case. You got a plug with a magnet way over here. You know what I mean? So, you know, it catches some of it. You can see it on there or whatever, but some of it gets up the pipe and gets into the oil pump. Of course, it goes around and around in the oil pump, and the material in the oil pump is a lot softer than the gear chip. So sometimes it will stir up a lot of chips out of your oil pump. More so than what you had in the transmission case. So anyhow, you got this blowing back through here, all over these gears, and you can see what happens is they get between the transmission case and the thrust washers. You can see they get kind of eaten up. They'll wipe out the primary case, the case that goes on here or whatever. So you got debris coming out of here, right? You can see that. You have problems with this thing. You got see little nicks in them and stuff like that. This is the weakest part of the drive lane. When it comes down to it, if you got this problem, is you got this crap being blown all over the gears. Well, on the other hand, you got the same problem going into your motor because of this valve. Because every time you light your motor off, you get oil pressure here first, and then you distribute it out to your motor. And the oil comes in here and goes through your filter, but there's your bypass. And if the oil pressure isn't up to what the oil pressure is down here, it'll bump that little ball off the seat and it'll bypass unfiltered oil. Well, it doesn't take too many times of that going into your main bearing and your center main or any of your bearings or whatever before it starts to eating at your motor. And by plugging that valve off there, I could increase your engine life by 50% at least. You guys haven't done this. Jeremy loves you.
Don't do it.
Because this was designed to go on all the BMC cars.
Why did the factory do it?
Duh!
Sell cars.
It's about as close as I can say.
I think it maybe.
Because they made it for all the other cars now, and they didn't change it for the Mini. They didn't re-engineer it for the Mini. So when it comes down to it, getting little chips through there after a while wear your bearings out of your motor, and that's what makes the dang things get loose. And it's inevitable. And if you can take and block that little hole off right there and make it go through your filter, which it has, I've never had a bit of problems making it do, you get all filtered oil. And you can increase your engine life probably 50%.
So
Short of anything else that might go wrong with it, at least you're not going to have troubles with your crank and bearings. But there is one other reason why you have troubles with your crank and bearings. And that's the flywheel on the other end down here with the clutch in it. And those housings that go on the outside, the housings are not made so that they're exactly on center to the end of your crankshaft. And I found them so that when you're using your clutch a lot, that it'll actually vibrate your crankshaft and wipe out your center main and stuff like that if they're too bad. Some of the later throw-out bearing stuff, they've got it floating at the end of that shaft so that it self-centers. So that you actually push on the other thing. In my racing, I didn't want something self-centering when I'm trying to step on the clutch at 8,500 or 9,000 to shift the thing.